This is Scott Drake, and you're watching the Legal Broadcast Network. Dr. Conrad Murray has emerged as the primary target in the death of Michael Jackson. But law enforcement sources tell us a massive investigation is taking form into what could be fraudulent prescription practices of more than a dozen doctors, and it's possible that that number could easily double. My guest is Los Angeles criminal defense attorney Michael Kraut. He's senior partner of the Kraut Law Group, and he's a former prosecutor and deputy district attorney. Thanks for checking in with us today, Michael.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, good morning to you. What about the charges here that are possible against not only Murray, but it looks like others?
Well, I think there's two different types of related charges that you're going to see in terms of Murray. First of all, it's similar to the Anna Nicole Smith case. You're going to find not only Dr. Murray, but probably at least a dozen or so other physicians, both for Michael Jackson and probably other members of his family, for writing prescriptions, over-medicating people, and writing them for names that are not the true name. And under California law, that is illegal, and it's a pretty strict liability. If you do it, you're guilty of the crime. Mm-hmm. Dr. Murray has probably much more serious concerns other than just losing his license for false prescription writing. And that just really has to do with over-medicating him and giving Mr. Jackson propofol, which is an IV drug. That drug, if you were to do some research on that, you're going to find that is recommended and highly recommended. It's only to be used in a hospital setting or a medical facility setting where an electrocardiogram is attached to the patient, because the chances of this drug being overused or over-medicated is so easily occurring, and the risk of heart failure and depressed lung capacity in the use of the heart happens pretty quick. So Conrad Murray has that to worry about. We kind of got an inkling of what was happening on that based upon a search warrant that was issued by a Houston clinic, and Los Angeles Police Department detectives were present at that. And in that search warrant, as all search warrants, they describe what crime they're looking into, and the word manslaughter was used.
Okay, in this type of case, normally with this drug Diprivan, I think, which is the common term for it, usually a patient who's given that anesthesia is intubated, right?
That's correct. It's an IV. If they're not intubated, they are at least on a monitoring system with oxygen present.
What do you think is the possible motivation for a doctor to prescribe drugs illegally to somebody like Jackson? Certainly they're celebrities, which this is probably more common than we even care to believe, but what would be the motivation on the doctor's part?
I think for some doctors, this really becomes a slippery slope. Being that, my firm is in Los Angeles, I kind of see a little bit more of this because of the industry. I think it really begins with physicians, an occasional celebrity, maybe even a low-level celebrity goes to them, and they want to have a different name used on a prescription. And while the doctors clearly know that that's illegal, they begin the slippery slope. They begin to stretch that, and they want to be within the good graces. The amount of money that these doctors make from the celebrities is immense. There's no insurance billing. There's no co-payments. It is whatever the doctor wants to charge, and these people have the money to pay it. Someone like Dr. Murray, you'll see, was living for the summer and the spring in Bel Air at a mansion and probably having to do little to no work, while his clinic was both in Houston and Las Vegas, and they were just continuing to be run by partners.
I'm not sure toxicology reports are in at any stage yet, but how does this affect things, for example, if the toxicology reports show that Jackson simply died of a heart attack?
Well, first of all, I understand that they're saying the toxicology report is not back. My experience as when I was a deputy district attorney is that report is back, and it's in the hands of law enforcement. And under certain evidence codes, it does not have to be turned back. It's an investigative tool at this point. And so it would be my guess that that's part of the basis that's going to be used in these search warrants, is they understand both the statement of Dr. Murray, which now indicates that he did give propofol by IV that morning to Jackson, plus his statement that he waited 30 minutes to call 911. Those are the things that are going to be used to then pinpoint what to look at in the toxicology report. So you don't just have the corpus of a crime, which is the toxicology report, but you have the cop-out, the statement from the doctor.
It sounds like from your perspective as a former prosecutor that they're building a pretty strong case here. Let's put the shoe on your foot on the other side. As a criminal defense attorney, say Dr. Murray was your client, how would you go about defending him?
Well, first you'd look at what the crimes are that could possibly be looked at. And they could elevate as high as murder, but murder would have to be either it would have to be either an implied malice or express malice. Well, you're never going to have express malice on a murder. That would mean he actually purposely tried to kill Michael Jackson, and I don't think there's any evidence of that. Implied malice murder would mean that you know that you're doing something wrong, and the risk is so severe that what you're doing, such as playing with a loaded gun, and the typical scenario is Russian roulette. You put a bullet in, you keep spinning it. It's implied malice that at some point you can expect that gun to go off. That's implied malice murder. Now, I don't expect that to ever be brought forward. I do think that you're going to have an issue of manslaughter. And manslaughter I would have to defend by looking at it as an involuntary manslaughter. And there's both a voluntary manslaughter, which is driving at such a risk, or here using a drug that you know that you shouldn't be doing and is contraindicated for the use that Dr. Murray did. And then I would be using that as a theory to say that while he might have violated state law with the prescriptions, I don't believe that that would be a situation where it would rise to the level of even involuntary manslaughter, being that it was so reckless that my client not only knew and assumed the risk, but continued to further his activities of injecting Mr. Jackson.
Michael, I want to speculate a little bit here from a personal standpoint about what may have been going on in Michael Jackson's household. Okay, he's obviously, from what the reports have said, he's having trouble sleeping. Does he administer this drug in IV form himself, or does he have somebody come in and administer it and then leave?
My understanding is the use of this, and this is going to be pure speculation, just, after 15 years of being a prosecutor and seeing these kind of cases. I want to make sure that that's clear. But it's my experience that with IV drugs, you really can't do this to yourself.
Okay.
It's too hard to do that, especially if they're doing it in the arm to try and get it into the vein. It's too hard to get into that spot. And you're going to have somebody there to assist you, and that's also going to be able to figure it out through Dr. Murray doing that. But the psychology, what's really going on here, I think is really starting to percolate to the top, and that's that Mr. Jackson was pretty distraught. He had inability to sleep. He had for the billions of dollars that he's worth in the long haul, this guy just cannot function. And whether it's what he went through as a kid, what he's gone through as an adult, how his father treated him, whatever it is, and infantilized him to the point where this guy just cannot function like a normal human being.
Does this change your perspective on the past issues that he faced, including the child molestation charges?
Well, I think that common sense starts to make you look at things a little bit differently, because I think we all looked at the child molestation as a normal functioning adult would not do this with a child and would not have these sort of actions occur. Now we're realizing that the person is not a normal functioning adult, and now you have to put this back into a different perspective. So now you have to go back and reanalyze everything. Is he just having such insomnia or an inability to sleep without being literally knocked out by an anesthetic that you could not overcome by any means? Is that what's being used to put him to sleep? And did he need, before it got to this level, the comfort of another human being, not an adult, because he was still a child?
Could you also argue, too, in this particular case, that obviously he's had a drug problem for quite some time, that whether or not this particular medication caused his death, that his body had been damaged so much over the years that it wouldn't take much to do that?
I don't know. Definitely, this is beyond my
Yeah.
expertise to discuss that. But what I can tell you is that if you just go on and online and do the research on this propofol and find out about this drug, even the healthiest, hardiest football player having this injected, the same contraindication occurs. You must have, or you absolutely should have, an echocardiogram going or electrocardiogram going at the same time. You need oxygen there for an emergency, and it's highly likely that the person can stop breathing and the heart can be just suppressed to that level. Whether you're an addict, whether you're a pop star, whether you're a football player, this drug is strong.
Michael Kraut is a Los Angeles criminal defense attorney. He's senior partner of the Kraut Law Group, and he's a former prosecutor and deputy district attorney. As always, Michael, a pleasure. Thanks for your perspective.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This is Scott Drake, and you're watching the Legal Broadcast Network.